Beloved students and disciples and torchbearers, you have chosen the best part of all that this world has to offer. You are here today so that you might have poured into the upraised cup of your consciousness the most valuable and indeed priceless commodity, which any part of reality or life can offer to you. That commodity is for you to actually receive and be able to re-radiate for yourself the I am awareness, that you yourself, the truth of who you are, is the nature of your beloved mighty I am presence, God individualized. Without question, this consciousness is more precious than all the gold and rubies and pearls, and any of the things which mankind put value upon. Surely as you drink the communion cup of the God consciousness of your own mighty I am presence, you will treasure that consciousness and sacrifice whatever lesser things might prevent you from holding that with an eternal awareness. If that sublime I am awareness still escapes you, or from time to time forsakes you, understand that the only reason it seems to be so is because there yet remains some vestige of the not self that has interjected itself between you and the light of that God consciousness shining in the chalice of your awareness. This steep path of Christhood that we speak of really is very simple. It all boils down to the putting down of that separate sense of identity, separate, divided, and apart from the nature of your mighty I am presence. Would that it were otherwise, but you do have to understand that you alone can put down that not self. None of the ascended masters or archangels can do it for you. And even the higher part of your own selfhood must be obliged to work through your own heart flame. Yes, through your heart flame, your I am presence and Christ presence do indeed speak and apply the pressure of their consciousness from within out, and you will never be without that which you have externalized of love, wisdom, and power upon the altar of your heart. That is the formative divine spark that you are fanning into a glorious bonfire of God consciousness. And that divine spark is fully capable of putting down this not self. There is no need to have fear, trembling, or consternation about this part of the path, because you have another selfhood that you may use as your refuge and with which you may identify. You have the ipse dixit of your ascended master sponsors, who have used the full authority of their office to testify over and over and over again to you that you are empowered to identify yourself with your own beloved I am presence. And in that identification, to always bear in mind that the presence with whom you identify is an eternal individualization of the great I am. So there you have safe and secure a sense of selfhood. If you were not to appreciate the mystery of God individualized, one God, one Son, or one presence, many sons, many daughters, then there might be the temptation to feel, oh dear, if I truly loose the moorings of all that I have thought to be what I intrinsically was in my innermost nature, which up until that time would have been understood by you to be your soul, you would be tempted to think that what you were facing is obliteration, going out of existence. The dewdrop proverbially slipping back into and becoming only the ocean, and no longer having any selfhood or persistence of identity whatsoever. That, of course, understandably would be most terrifying and something everyone would be loath to do. But now you have the God freedom of knowing the permanency and the truth of the individualization of your own beloved mighty I am presence. This is a light of God consciousness that you alone must keep alive for yourself, and collectively the mystic groves of the ecclesia must be the ones who keep that flame burning as the unfed flame of God consciousness in this outer world of form. Yes, you are like the Vestals of ancient Greece and Rome, whose whole career was to tend the fires of the unfed flame, that they never, ever, ever would expire. So it is with this ephemeral consciousness that we are referring you to today, this consciousness of God individualized. Shortly, you will see what a practical service that consciousness can do to you by way of filling your world with ascended master perfection. But before we move to that, let us stay on this theme a little bit longer of understanding the concept of God individualized in your own mighty I am presence. In the previous two ascended master activities, which preceded the temple of the presence, there was lost that flame. You might recall many of the unfed flames that were in the retreats of the Brotherhood on Poseidonis, and it was the great work of certain initiates to tend those fires, to see that they did not go out on the earth and return back to the heart of God, where they would be loved and tended as they should be. Well, this consciousness was in some regards lost. And I'll give you one example. There was a term that became codified as it related to the Christ presence that you now know as the vehicle of your mighty I am presence operating in the higher mind or mental body. That became referred to as the Christ self. And therefore, selfhood was viewed to originate at that level of the Christ self. Whereas the electronic body of the mighty I Am presence was viewed to be a universal that was the same for all of life, for all reality. And this was carried out so far that at a certain stage, when the process of the ascension was being described in minute detail, following the resurrection and absorption of the four lower bodies back into the Holy Christ self, there was a description that the one presence in the electronic body would take a golden chain that it had around its neck and drape that golden chain around the neck of the resurrected Holy Christ self. And those twain would then move through the rest of eternity in that dual action. And the Christ self, since it was encircled by this golden chain, would be bound by that to the will of the universal presence. So there was still the two, the mighty I Am presence and the ascended master with the golden chain around its neck. Why bring this example to your consciousness? Because at some point on your path, you will have to truly dispense with all sense of duality about yourself and your mighty I Am presence. Those vestiges of duality can be quite subtle in some respects. For example, take the word worship. Worship has very many connotations, but one involves the idea that the lesser is worshiping something outside of its very own nature that is greater, the lesser worshiping the greater. If in your own mind you have inherited from the religion of your parents or the common way in which religion has been practiced on this earth, if you carry that sense of worship with you, there will still be you and God. You, the lesser, will be worshiping God, a God who is not the very selfhood that you are. That may be one of the very lowest steps of the path of initiation. Love and adoration, honor, are not worship. What in fact does occur is a process that is repeated all along the way, and one which needs to be practiced by you even now. For example, right now there might be a sense that there's you, the four lower bodies, and then there is the other you, the Christ presence. And at some future time, those will reunite, which indeed they shall. And at that point, the initiation of the resurrection takes place. But then what happens next is that the resurrected Christ presence receives the crystal ray from the electronic body and rises weightlessly back into and is fully blended, merged, unified into the electronic body of its very own selfhood, so that there are no longer the twain, but there is the one ascended presence. Now, that, of course, is a permanent state of individuality, which is very true and absolutely a part of the path. However, interestingly or profoundly, it also happens to be true that mighty I Am presence ascended as an ascended being is also one with the great God flame. And also the great God flame knows itself to be an undivided focus of the great I Am. So that there is no duality imputed by either the ascended master or by the great God flame of the twin rays, in terms of them considering themselves to be somehow autonomous islands, separate and apart from the great I Am. Every ascended master and every cosmic being knows that the presence of their I Am presence is the presence of the great I Am. That they each one, in the most profound way, ways that will become joyful to you as you enter into the state of consciousness of them, you will come to prize and treasure that consciousness of the one, or oneness, if you will. Oneness with separate focuses as individual I Ams, but nevertheless, oneness with that allness of the Godhead. That is actually already alive, that sense of oneness, already alive on the altar of the threefold flame, the unfed flame of your heart, here in embodiment. Even though it has been stated previously and taught, we celebrate again today, just as if we were bringing out the best champagne that we had out of our cellar, because it was a special occasion. We are going to pop the cork on one level of God consciousness that has been bestowed upon the students by beloved Saint Germain. It was his teaching that every unspoken prayer, if your heart flame is, while you are asleep, your heart flame is active. And even in the middle of the nighttime when you think you are asleep, if your heart murmurs an unspoken prayer that even your outer consciousness is not aware of, that unspoken prayer is instantaneously known by the great I Am. The God of very gods is absolutely sensitive to, receptive to, aware of every murmur of your heart flame. The reason is because your heart flame is the focus of that great I Am presence. What a solemn responsibility it is then, how you utilize that heart flame, how you guard it, and how you shepherd all of the energy of that heart flame that is qualified through the vehicle of your four lower bodies. There is a reciprocal relationship between your heart flame in your four lower bodies and every one of these stages. Certainly there at the level of the Christ presence, certainly there at the level of the mighty I Am presence, certainly there at the level of the great I Am. It is important that you keep these things in the forefront of your consciousness, because the process of mastery, the process of overcoming, and the whole process of creation, which is why you are here in embodiment, is because of this reciprocal I-aming that goes on eternally between the individualizations of God and the allness of the Godhead. And there is a decided active role that is played by the great I Am in all that takes place in your life. If you are ever tempted because you find yourself caught up in the swirl of worldly events, all of the reports of the five physical senses, all of the things that are screamed out from the headlines of the newspapers and blaring forth from other forms of reporting media, as those things bombard your consciousness, you might understandably be tempted to feel that you are at the mercy of all of those more powerful forces than yourself. What is needed is for you to realize that God Almighty, the God of very gods, the one, the good, through that great I Am of that presence, is attentive to your heart flame, and when you rise in the office of your beloved mighty I Am presence. This is something we'll get to very shortly. When you rise into that consciousness and you give the command in the office of your mighty I Am presence, as you have been empowered to do, not only is your own presence going to answer, not only will it galvanize the various ones of the ascended masters, but you shall also have the reverberation in and out, the trembling of all that is the limitless nature of the great I Am. And the vastness and the magnitude and the omnipotence of that, you will understand as something which science will never discover because it doesn't exist in this outer world. And that is the convergence from every point of eternity coming together, all the forces of life and creation converging where the call goes forth, and bringing together by the laws of perfection and necessity all that is necessary to come forth in your life. Hence the statement, one with God is the majority rule. When you are able to rise into that oneness, you then are able to begin to trigger the release of this all-powerful presence that is everywhere present. Why, if this be true, do we have such a blunting of our efforts? It is because of the moment by moment by moment qualification of thought, feeling, memory, and the odic forces in the subplanes of the earth element. Life is being qualified by you constantly. And there is this accumulation, this sum total of what has been the accumulation of your creative efforts in all of your many incarnations up until now. And you yourself are the best one to judge how successful you are in maintaining the stream of thought, the flow of feelings, in the levels of purity and constructive nature that is required in order to bring about the things that you need to bring about. That is why many times it does not seem that the results are forthcoming as you would like them to. Now here is the jewel, the crown jewel in all of the gifts that God has to offer to you. It is the culmination of the allness of God in the God consciousness and the attributes of divine perfection. Your individual mighty I Am presence is absolute, pristine, dazzling perfection of every possible variation on the theme of reality. It is perfection. And when you have once stood within even the inner circle of your own individuality, of your own mighty I Am presence, which you can do when you no longer have a sense of duality, but once you stand within that inner circle, you will truly realize that the law of the being of your individual presence is perfection, and that the body of that being, worn by your mighty I Am presence, is a body of self-luminous light that is self-sourced and that is perfection. And that this body is in the process of radiating as a veritable sun. This was going on before you became aware of it. All the time that you have been down here struggling, that sun of perfection, S-U-N, has been pouring forth, boiling off skeins, solar winds, great magnetic loops, all of the metaphors that you can think of, radiating forth absolute perfection. And what that means for you on your path is that as you dismantle the bars of duality that have veiled out that vision, then that sun of that perfection is able to stream through your memory, stream out from your mind, stream through your feeling body, not just the top level of your feelings, but the depths, the deep waters of your feelings, streaming with God perfection into the etheric odic forces of the physical body can come streaming that perfection. So that even in the four lower bodies, you have this self-sourced, endless, undiminished giving of absolute God perfection that is able to pour forth, and actually maintain that outpouring without cessation. Ever, there will never be a cessation of that. Certainly not at inner levels. And it is the intent that that same perfection should stream forth. It means that what will happen is that your own personal force field out here in time and space will be that perfection. And I assure you that as you stand within that fountain, the consciousness that will come with it is that because only that perfection is thrusting and going forth as the law of your being, there will not be room nor opportunity for anything other than that natural perfection to ever return back to come forth as a manifestation in your life. Your mighty I Am presence can be the source of that inspiration to your mind as perfection. It can be the joy of that perfection in your feeling world. It can be the patterns, the designs of such perfection in your physical world. And you will discover that it is sufficient for you. You will be full. You will be filled to overflowing, and there will be no longer any chink of earthly desires, appetites, curiosities, yens for anything that this world has to offer. For you would not for all the world ever wish to have that outpouring flow of perfection to ever cease within your world. Of course, until you have taken down the bars of duality by enduring the path of initiation, you will have to take that on faith. But it is a part of the reward that comes once there are no longer really two of you, which is really an illusion. There really is but one of you, and that is the true selfhood of your mighty I Am presence. One of the first joys that will come to you as you re-enter the charmed radiance of your own beloved mighty I Am presence, one of the things that will be astounding to you is that coming from this outer world, operating as you have been obliged to do in this outer mind, you've considered that the laws of physics are the laws of the way things were, and that only this world was so-called nature. But one of the things that you are going to discover or rediscover as you enter is that divine perfection is the natural estate of life. It isn't supernatural, much less alien. It is not supernatural. It isn't otherworldly. As you enter those realms, including the Ascended Master world, you'll say, why of course? Why did it take me so long? Here it was all the time. This is the way God is, and it is only natural that reality should reflect God's nature, which is perfection. And you will realize that what we have here in this outer world of form is a special case that has only come about because we have the X factor of misqualification that has, over millions of years, distorted the beauty of God in reality, in nature, and superimposed what can only be described as subnatural or unnatural. Human creation, human miscreation is unnatural. Although it seems to be part and parcel with reality, it is not. And the distinction between the two is many times quite subtle. For example, the full bloom of a rose is as natural and as a part of the out symbol and the perfume of the love of a heart flame. But yet the thorn that seems so seamlessly a part of the stem of that rose, that thorn is a lie. That thorn is unnatural. It is only there as a human self-defense mechanism that has been imposed upon the elemental forces of life around this particular Earth planet due to the compounding over millions of years of the collective human thought and feeling nature that have been a part of mankind's creation. So, blessed ones, will you accept your divine inheritance? The nature of your mighty I am presence as God perfection. Will you understand how very, very volatile and sensitive are the nuances of thought and feeling? You know, in many times in the entertainment films, they have followed a consistent theme when it comes to a certain type of an explosive, which was liquid nitroglycerin. And they would be warned that if there was just a sudden bump or a too loud crack of a noise, that would be all it would take to cause that liquid nitroglycerin to explode. Well, that's child's play compared to every qualification of emotion you have, every qualification of thought that you engage in, every rumblings out of the folds of memory, all of these together with action and words, deeds, all of these are far more powerful than nitroglycerin because they are all taking this creative life of God and putting some matrix, some qualification, good or bad, upon it. And the results are sure to follow. There are no two ways about it. What you have been given in this teaching and this path is a means whereby the things that have burdened you, that have come forth out of the memory, are able to be erased by the gentle action of the mercy flame and the violet flame, or if need be, the more intense action of the ruby ray and the blue lightning. But in all cases, they go into the flame, those overlays, and they are no more. And with that out of the way, it means that instead, the affirmative patterns of divine perfection, which are the divine counterpart to the human perversions, those can at long last be passed along. They exist as a sun. Your electronic body doesn't take second place to the physical sun that you see that lights the heavens. Your electronic body is vibrating hotter, faster, brighter, more intensely than the physical sun itself. When you're in your electronic body and you look down upon the physical sun, you might get a chill because it's going to seem cold and uninviting in comparison to how intense will be your own consciousness. It has its own purpose, to be sure, because it's tempering the wind that would overpower the formative nature at the present time. But the point is that your electronic body is such a self-sourced, luminous, self-luminous sun. And what it is radiating is the consciousness of your individual I am presence. And the nature, the natural estate of that consciousness is I am perfection. Perfection of every possible variation on the theme. This is something that we await, look forward to the summer Acropolis, because we're going to get into the nuances of that magnificence of God perfection that is there. But for you today, the important thing to realize is that the impetus, the breath, the fiery breath of that electronic body is more powerful than the moldy, wet leaves of the memory body that would smother the heart flame. That fiery breath is more powerful, if you'll let it be, than whatever might go through your conscious mind. And here, especially in the feeling world, when the perfection of the presence can boil the emotional body, so that it is tumbling over with bliss and happiness and goodness, because it is being fueled by this greater than a nuclear furnace of the heart flame in that memory, in that emotional body, with all the various variations on the theme of emotions that are harmonious and constructive and are perfection. You may rest assured that as you succeed to shepherd your feelings along into those matrices of divine perfection in the feeling world, it is there where they are best translated into the forces of necessity that will absolutely of necessity press through, press through, press through, press through, press out, press out, press out onto the screen of the physical earth element and obligate by necessity of cosmic law that what comes back to you reflect that perfection in your life. While all of that is taking place, remember again that there is a part to be played, a role that is forever played by the individualizations of God, wherever they might be. The individualizations of the I Am presence have the lawful office of commanding the universalizations of the same Godhead. They are the part that are to decide. They have individual free will, individual self-conscious awareness, as well as individual God desire, all of which are necessary for creation to take place. What is there for these individualizations to command but the universalizations of the same Godhead? And that is the sense that you will want to have, is that there is the Godhead in life. Never let it be said. We're going to talk a little bit about this concept of the Godhead as God Almighty. Each ascended being, each I Am presence, each great God flame knows themselves to be an individualization of the great I Am. And really and truly, it is a sense that the great I Am and the presence are the greater reality. But there is no duality between that greater reality and the focus of individuality. But never let it be considered that there is any haughty sense of superiority on the part of the ascended master to the great I Am. They all know, and we all know, the correct hierarchical structure that begins with the presence and the Godhead, and then the great I Am, and then the individualizations of the great I Am. But there is such oneness and reciprocity between them that it is a distinction without a difference. No one at that level makes such distinctions. The only place that such an aberration ever temporarily exists is when you have the imp of the human ego that asserts itself. Other than that, through the whole of even the physical cosmos, there are no such distinctions. There is such profound sense of not only wholeness and community, but even more a profound sense of being grounded in this presence that is the one, the good, the Godhead. That is the reality that supersedes all others. And there is never any idolatry. If anything, only in some of the previous major world religions, one in particular, was there ever an equation of an individualization of God with that absolute nature of the I Am, that I Am. So, there is a role to be played by the limitless nature of that Godhead in all that is to come forth. Beloved Saint Germain, when he first brought forth this teaching, made this very profound promise to the students of the light, saying that I can convey to you the conviction within yourself that you may rise into your mighty I am presence and command as the I am presence. And that when you command as the I am presence, God Almighty, the great I am, moves into action. That is an absolute truth, that the universal nature of the presence is energized and activated and moves into action at the command of the individualization of the Godhead. What transpires when that occurs? In consciousness, if you were really able to enter into it, it is as if from the point where you are, there goes forth this command. And first it is a point, then it becomes a sphere, and that sphere eddies out to the whole vastness, not only of our physical universe, but to the whole vastness of the great central sun and to the vastness of the limitless sea of light. And then that all comes back. And from everywhere, it converges back to the point at which that command was issued. And as it comes back with that sense of irrevocable necessity and compression. Light and life are compressing and pressing through until manifestation is going to occur in your world. So what you are left with is this wonderful communion. Not only communion between you and your individual I am presence, but as you rise first into your Christ presence and then into your mighty I am presence, more and more you will sense that all about you is this great I am. All about you is this I am that I am. And you will have the sense that consciousness dotes on you, that it individualized you as itself so that it could lavish you with everything good in life, so that it could love you, so it could pile up every possible blessing upon your lap, just produce everything perfect for you. I'll give you one example of this. A number of places in the initial releases, there was the remark and the observation that when you are drawn, when the students were drawn into the inner electronic circle of any one of the ascended masters, all of the mundane objects around them and everything else took on a sense of exquisite beauty that had gone unnoticed and unappreciated prior to that enfolding in that radiance. And there was one occasion when the children were being ferried about on train by Chananda, and a very interesting discussion took place between them. After our meeting, we were presented to various members of the Brotherhood, spending a delightful social hour. Then we motored back to our private car and found that the car had been run out onto a side spur into surroundings that looked like a flower garden, with beautiful fountains playing just outside the windows where we dined. At this, we commented on Chananda's ability to always, in an uncanny way, seeming to have the beautiful always expressing to us. And in reply, with one of his smiles that ever gave one the sense of sunshine, he said, "It is always much easier to express the beautiful because it is the natural, and it is the truth of the expression of the I Am Presence within everyone. Whenever anyone really and truly is able to accept their own glorious presence, and they also feel that their presence is the Godhead that is doing all things through them and doing all things on their behalf for them, then the rest of their activity must conform to this Godhead's marvelous beauty and perfection. Therefore, your full acceptance of your mighty I Am presence commands and always governs all outer experience harmoniously. Only when you do truly and fully accept this glorious God presence can you truly enter into divine service, because then, when you've had that acceptance, then the perfection of the I Am presence begins to be released to a greater and greater degree through your outer activity. These might seem only like words to you, but they are far, far more. And they will all be pregnant with their meaning when you come into that level of your own individual I Am presence, because it is perfection, perfection, perfection. And that is the best and sure defense against all of the things of this world that will otherwise seek to bore into your personal world and psyche and make a home inside of you like some type of parasite. No, that cannot be the case. When you make your own personal world a veritable blazing, dazzling sun, and now we're speaking of your emotional, your mental, your memory, and your physical bodies, when they become a blazing, blazing, blazing outpouring, which can only be done, by the way, even if you had heard of that ideal, and even if you accepted that that ideal was correct, and you decided, okay, that's what I'm going to be. If you still had those separations in the human ego, or if you did not rise into the point to where you and your mighty I Am presence were one instead of two, then you wouldn't be able, over the course of a whole lifetime, to sustain that momentum. It is the attention and devotion and acceptance of the I Am presence that produces that result. That is how it can be done. Of course, that will only work if you have weaned yourself of still having the desire to experience the things that this world has to offer that are separate from God. Once you really do understand that anything that you will really bring you joy and happiness is there within the presence, and you commit 100% to the Ascended Master way of living life under the canopy of the great oak tree of your own mighty I Am presence, the tree of life, and you're content to live within the boundary of its perfection, then that presence can lavish all of that perfection upon your world. Of course, the whole thing hinges on this especial unchaliced communion of having the consciousness of being the I am presence. Whether you look at it as the communion cup or you look at it as a little tumbler of liquid light essence, in all cases, I'm sure you would agree that it is the possession of that consciousness that is 9/10 of the law. And the truth is, beloved ones, that your beloved mighty I am presence is always in the act of performing the communion ritual with your life stream. The consciousness of your own I am presence is in each electron of light that comes down your crystal cord. Each one is like a little tiny thimbleful of that consciousness. They all start out from the heart of your electronic body, charged with the consciousness of your mighty I am presence. They have the full sense of vitality. They are pure. They have that God consciousness of perfection. They have the consciousness of the individuality of the being that your I am presence is. And numberless particles of those electrons of the liquid light of your I am presence are actually constantly descending into your life stream. The challenge is for you to be a good little Bo Peep, that as they jump over the fence into your four lower bodies, as soon as they enter into the realm of your four lower bodies, your free will takes over. And what you do with them will determine whether or not they keep their original charge of God consciousness intact, so that they can re-radiate that out through your four lower bodies. Or if your bodies will seize upon them like they were ravenous wolves, seize upon that light and gobble it up into various forms of misqualification. All of those electrons add up. It might seem as if any one of them is kind of very minuscule, but they have a collective impact, and you will re-radiate, and there will rise into your consciousness this ephemeral thing that seems to be so hard to obtain, this consciousness that they have, that they are the I am presence, because they have that charge of your individuality upon them. As you shepherd them harmoniously and purely into your four lower bodies and hold that charge over days, weeks, months, and years, allowing that charge to build up and build up and build up without you making any other effort, you will osmose the God consciousness as spontaneously and naturally as a rose unfolds its bud and exudes its perfume into space. It will be the natural estate of your being, because that is their nature, to radiate that forth out into life. Even before you have that accumulation of those electrons, of course, you're never bereft of your threefold flame, and that unfed flame likewise has that God consciousness upon it. But what you want to have is that I am awareness, so very fully in charge of your world that you are able to keep that flow going through your life. When that happens, by the way, you will be accomplishing the purposes for which you took incarnation. we have the painting of the Godhead charioteers. One of the things that we have talked about in association with the painting is that the purpose of incarnation is for you to earn the right to drive the family car. The family car really is the great central sun and all of the realms of creation. And if you can all remember back when you were 14 and 15 and didn't yet have your learner's permit or much less your license, and saying theoretically, you know, that mom or dad had the keys to the car. That was your freedom. That was your ability to get out on your own, to escape, to decide for yourself what you were going to do and what you were going to be. That family car was the panacea of life, to be able to go out and do that. It's very interesting. This is not something that the younger generations will remember, but it used to be that there were two keys, not just one. There was one for the ignition and one for the other doors in the trunk. So there were always two keys. And in the keys to the kingdom, there are two keys. There's the key of I and the key of am. The key of that which focuses and the key of that which expands. And what you are really doing here as Godhead charioteers is you are earning the right to drive the cosmos, to drive creation, to command it all as an ascended being and a cosmic being, to give commands to all of the monads, all of the hearts of God in the great central sun that ripple through all of creation. That is why you in your presence have undertaken the inconvenience of incarnation. You are the Godhead that is once again incarnating, the one Godhead, as the Godhead charioteer. And right now, you are still with your learner's permit and getting ready to take your final exam, where you will be issued your own license, after which you won't need someone to ride with you as you practice how to drive. There is far, far more to that than you realize, because every individualization of the Godhead has to do this for itself. Every time there's another individualization, it has to go through this process. Prior to your first incarnation, as a being in those inner realms, you saw the ascended masters and the Elohim and the archangels doing all of these wonderful, wonderful things, and you said to yourself, I want to do that too. Well, in miniature you are. But what you want to do now is to really perfect that process and actually bring it to that stage of completion. So there has to be the consciousness of God perfection. There has to be the consciousness of God individualized. And there has to be the consciousness of the Godhead. The one, the good, the presence. That is where there is this oneness that is shared by all of the many individualizations of that presence. It is the Godhead. And in fact, there is this intimate shuttling of a giving and receiving of selfhood that flows back and forth between the individualizations of God and the allness of the Godhead. That always is ongoing, as we just cited to you in the case of Chananda. One of the ways that this was referred to in the initial part of the teaching is the concept of God in action, that the presence is actually engaged. What you are learning, which has really, especially in modern democracies, been looked down upon. And who's to say maybe it shouldn't be when it comes to people ordering each other around. Now that it's no longer de rigueur for people to order each other around, the whole concept of a commanding presence has been put into a negative light. But the truth of the matter is, for each and every ascended master, you will find that there is a quiet dignity and authority that they carry themselves with, and there is a consciousness of a commanding presence. And so you too will have to absorb that consciousness which is in your own I am presence. That you are acting lawfully without pride, without egotism, in issuing the I am conscious cosmic Christ command, and sending that forth as the individualization of your mighty I am presence, and that the allness of God, that God Almighty in that allness is the part of his universal nature that in so many different ways is the family car of the great central sun in the universe that answers that call and is the doer that is coming back together and bringing things together in manifestation. That action of that compression, one of the ways that the great divine director described this, probably 4 or 5 times in the course of one address. He said that, of course, you should not feel as if you are somehow or another in some servile form of service to any of the ascended masters. You are really in service to life and light itself. But he went on to say that when you have earned the right by your attainment and your mastery to through your long service to the light, that the moment will come when that light that you have been serving literally pays attention, stands up, turns around, and the light turns and serves you. The light comes and flows in service to you. That is part of God consciousness that does not exist in this scientific view of life. In the outer sciences, they have a principle called entropy, which is absolutely inviolate. It cannot, in its totality, ever be proven to be wrong. Entropy means that energy and order in the cosmos are bleeding away, becoming less and less organized, and this is the inevitable doom of the physical universe, to die by cold death entropy, which is just the dilation of everything into nothingness over however long a cycle it takes. That is carnal-minded, resulted thought. And in fact, the truth is life, while it goes out, it always comes back to the point of consciousness that sent it forth. And so does light. It goes out and it comes back. And as it comes back, if what you sent out is perfection, goodness and mercy are going to follow you all the days of your life. If you send out imperfection, you're going to feel like there is a sword of Damocles that's following you, or the wolf at the door. It all depends on what you send out. I'm sure you'd agree it's better to send out perfection, 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 because then that is what will come back to you. And the desire for God perfection. if we sound a little bit too passionate, you may rest assured that when you reach, if you haven't yet, when you reach those levels and you are doused and baptized as a form of total immersion in that liquid light of the God consciousness of your own I am presence, you too will have a zeal and a passion for the pristine purity and breathtaking beauty of God perfection, which is the natural way life is in reality. And it will be enough of a motive to keep you motivated for all eternity, to manifest that perfection in all of the inspiring ways that the great I am in its infinite mind of beauty is constantly thinking up schemes and designs and plans and destinies and providences for that perfection. Right now, the one thing that is open to all of you, which you may use as a bulwark of protection as you are engaged in your path, is to use the authority of your I am presence to pack space with perfection. It's there in the white fire core, and it can come out from that white fire core. It's there in that great I am, which is everywhere present in general, but nowhere in particular. But it can come forth and be qualified as that perfection. And when you find yourself ensconced in that perfection on all sides, when it surrounds you like a citadel or a castle or a walled city, when you find that that perfection is present, you will know that nothing less can ever creep in to any crevice, any little chink. There won't be any crevice or chink in your armor, because there'll be so much of a white fire furnace of the crucible of resurrection's flame and light's perfection that is packed in, that only that perfection may continue to express in your life. The decree that we have in our decree book that captures this best is the one decree. We said at the beginning of this class that once you have called for the annihilation of imperfection, once we have told it you have no power, we follow that up in all cases by putting ascended master perfection in its place. And so here today, we are going to give the last third of that decree. It begins at the top of page 34. You know, when at various times, different armies have had different battle cries as they would climb out of the protected area and go on into war. We don't consider this a battle cry in that sense, but it is a raising of the ensign. This cry that we give at the beginning of this decree, I am the presence of God individualized, one God, one presence, many sons, many fathers, many daughters. Let that be our cry, our hue and cry that we hurl forth as the challenge of God perfection. And then, in the interest of time, we will move directly, which I don't recommend you do or under ordinary circumstances, to the third section, page 36. Let's give the first opening invocation 3 times. I am the presence of God, individualized, one God, one presence, many sons, many daughters. I am the presence of God, individualized, one God, one presence, many sons, many daughters. I am the presence of God, individualized. One God, one presence, many sons, many daughters. I am the one. I am that I am. I am the one supreme, all-pervading God in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading presence in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading good in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading love in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading being in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading life in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading intelligence in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading light in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading will in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading law in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading truth in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading essence in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading awareness in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading bliss in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading I am in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading sun in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading sun in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading Akasha in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading glory in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading fire in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading Christos in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading prana in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading Thoha in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading heart in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading love in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading wisdom in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading power in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading harmony in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading mind in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading desire in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading substance in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading nature in action. I am the one supreme, all-pervading presence of light and life in action. Everywhere Christos, everywhere changeless, everywhere dazzling, everywhere all-powerful, everywhere all-knowing, everywhere present, everywhere outpouring, everywhere overflowing, everywhere perfection, everywhere abundance, everywhere fruiting, everywhere manifest, everywhere victorious, everywhere in action, in action, in action, now and forever.